Doctors and nurses of Reddit, who have delivered babies to mothers, who clearly cheated on their husbands, what was that like? Welcome to Total Reddit, keep your eyes on Total Reddit. Not exactly the situation you're asking for, but Reddit loves a good crazy mill story. My dad is blonde and my mom is brunette. I came out of the womb with fiery red hair. My dad's mom made a huge fuss about my mom cheating on my dad and had to be escorted out of the hospital. My grandmother's own mother had flaming red hair, which she apparently forgot until my great-grandmother held me for the first time and said, "I always wanted a baby with my red hair." In high school my gym teacher was married to the biology teacher, who was also really good friends with my math teacher, always saw them chatting and walking together. Well, the bio teacher got pregnant, and when she brought the baby in there was an unignorable resemblance to the math teacher. Her husband ended up driving to the nearest hospital and shooting himself dead in the parking lot. Was a big scandal at our relatively small private school. One of a few actually. Anesthesiologist here. C-sections are typically done under spinal anesthesia, and we're the ones at the head of the table keeping the mother calm and talking her through the procedure while the surgeons operate. I've seen it more than once, but I remember one in particular when the parents were both very Caucasian, and the baby was very much not. The actual father obviously had to be very dark-skinned. At delivery, when the not father saw the baby, he just looked down at his wife, who was starting to cry, and calmly said, "You f***ing whore," and walked out. She started screaming for him to come back, but there wasn't much she could do since she was, still being operated on. She lost it to the point I eventually had to sedate her just a bit because she was in danger of injuring herself. As far as I know, her husband never came back to the hospital. I don't know what happened after that. Not a doctor or nurse. But in undergrad I had a buddy, Caucasian, who'd been dating the same girl, also Caucasian, for a while. She gets knocked up, he proposes. Fast forward a few months and both families are eagerly waiting at the hospital to meet the baby. The baby comes out black. Everyone is in shock. Girl is frantically trying to convince everyone that there's been a misunderstanding. My buddy called off the engagement immediately, returned the ring, and never looked back. Little different twist, I am Ukrainian. My great-grandfather was Crimean Tatar, who are mixed Turkic and Mongolian. My wife is Ukrainian and Italian. My first boy was blonde, my second was dark-haired, dark-skinned, and has the classic almond-shaped Asiatic eyes. Mongolian spot. Despite the fact that we know my family history, we ordered a test to make sure there was no separation at birth. Stuff, C-section. Yep, that's our boy. You would never know looking at us that that boy is genetically related to us. And we love him to pieces. Newborn had chlamydia, got it from the mom, obviously. So the mom admits she was cheating on the dad, because there's no other way to explain that one. Except, the dad was cheating too, with the other guy's girlfriend, and all four of them had chlamydia, with no idea who had it first. They also had no idea who the actual dad was. That was a rodeo. Had two women give birth a few days apart on my floor. Turns out they actually had the same baby daddy. The father of the two newborns got both patients pregnant around the same time. It was an interesting day for the social worker. A friend of mine tells the story of his aunt giving birth, in the 1970s or 80s, to a baby that at first glance appeared to be of Asian descent. Aunt and her husband are both Caucasian Midwesterners from long lines of the same sort, going back to Germany. There was evidently a shock moment, and then the aunt's father, my friend's grandfather, quipped, "Well, they say 1 in 7 babies is born Chinese," and everyone laughed. The tension broke, long enough for the doctor, also a white Midwesterner of German stock, said that likely the kid's color is just off due to the events of the birth. That baby is now a man in his 30s or 40s, and looks like your typical Midwesterner. He just had some tinge to his skin for a few hours following the birth, plus some dark hair at birth that has since lightened up. Not a doctor, but someone in my extended family had a baby, 2 Middle Eastern parents, that turned out to be dark-skinned. The father of the baby filed for divorce, even though the mother kept saying the baby was his. A few years later, they found out that the mother's great-grandmother was African and that the baby obtained strong genes from her. They didn't get back together, because too much had gone down at that point, but the mother was right all along. Okay, story from a friend of my brother's. She worked as a nurse and a woman and her husband came in. They were both white, and she delivered a child that was black. The husband immediately starts saying WTF, while she is going on and on about dormant traits and everything. He orders a DNA test. While this is going on, her mother and stepdad show up. The stepdad is black. After the testing is done, the DNA test ends up showing that the baby is the stepdad's. Her husband instantly dropped her and cut ties. My so and I just had our first in January. He has brown hair and I'm blonde. When she arrived, the nurse exclaimed, "Wow, look at that red hair." We know it's a recessive gene, but it wasn't the very first thing we expected to hear. We looked at each other for a moment and I said, in my drugged and exhausted post-labor stupor, "I swear she's yours." So a friend of mine, he is unfortunately dead, had cancer and he was dating a girl for about 2 years. He then discovered he had cancer and that he would live at best 1 more year. His girlfriend announced to him a week later that she was pregnant. They were both white. He kept on saying that life is a joke. He was happy because he would have a baby now, but sad because he would die in a year. Anyway, 9 months later the baby was born and it was black. He then disappeared for weeks and we learned that he had died a month later. Felt so f***ing sorry. We had a very sweet blonde-haired blue-eyed mom and dad along with their entire extended family in the room for a delivery one busy afternoon at work. Think aunts, uncles, cousins, grandma, and grandpa too. The baby is born and as the doctor places her on the mom's chest, the first words out of her mouth are, "That's not my baby. That's not my baby." The baby in question, still attached at the umbilical cord, has beautiful dark curly black hair, and dark skin. The nurse looks at her and tells her that this is definitely her baby because she's still attached to you, and she, not so quietly, tells the nurse, "There's no way, I never slept with a black man. It's not mine." The father is standing there silent, not sure what to do. A long awkward silence fills the room. We clean her and baby up as cheerfully as we can. We see the extended family filter out of the room and the father leave to get a cigarette. About 10 minutes later a tall black guy walks up to our front desk asking how to get to the patient in question's room. Not exactly cheating, but definitely an awkward situation. During my OB rotation in med school, I was caring for a patient with a very large family, the kind that all wanted to be part of the delivery process from beginning to end. They were having a baby girl, and the room was absolutely filled from wall to wall with pink presents. Bassinets, blankets, clothing, embroidered quilts, you name it. Anyways, I deliver the baby and I'm horrified, thinking there was some sort of mutation in the baby's vagina. After my initial shock, I realized it was simply a perfectly normal looking baby penis and testicles. The "congrats, it's a boy" was met with shock instead of excitement initially, but then everyone was so happy after understanding he was perfectly healthy. Apparently even with good prenatal care, you can miss the male genitalia on ultrasounds about 1% of the time. Not really relevant to the thread, but sometimes I like to tell the story about how, when I was having a C-section, I tried to communicate that I knew the procedure was starting because I felt pressure on my skin. Unfortunately, what I managed to say was, "I felt that." My anesthesiologist went, "Oh shit," and gave me ketamine. I was tripping balls for my kid's birth, and all I remember is an unending hallway of doors, but there was no ceiling, it was just open to a psychedelic universe of stars. When I was wheeled to recovery, we passed my mother-in-law at the nursery. She turned to see me and I helpfully informed her I'm high as a kite. I was assisting at a cesarean when I was a junior doctor. The woman's dark-skinned partner had been in prison 9 months or so. I took the baby immediately upon delivery and announced cheerily, "It's a boy." Her first words were, "Is it black?" Luckily the baby was a mocha color that could have gone either way, and I told her in a mildly confused manner, "It could be." I already made a comment, but I do have a story about a close call of this nature. So, a few years ago I respond to an ad of the NSFW nature. I was feeling adventurous, of a request for a man to fulfill a cuckold fantasy. Basically they wanted a man who looked similar to the boyfriend of the couple to FK the girlfriend while the boyfriend watched. There was a whole act about it. She'd call me by his name, I'd act clearly different and more sexually aggressive than him, let the lie slip up a few times and badly cover it up, which she'd buy it 100%, you know, make a whole act about it. Like playing out a PN script. Anyway, the deed is done and 9 months later I get a call from the girlfriend. She's pregnant and expecting within the week, and they're worried I might be the father. I did use a condom but she wasn't on the pill and the paranoia was understandable. Also they hadn't had S*X for a week before and a couple weeks after, so the timing matched up. The baby came out, either of us could be the father as it looks vaguely like both of us. It was a boy BTW, naturally it was F-king tense and awkward as hell. It took a week for the DNA test to get back, the delay was agonizing. Thankfully it came back that I was in the clear. There was actually a bit of a celebration. When I got the word I cheered, they hugged, I gave them a handshake and a hug, said my congratulations, went home and drunk a whole damn bottle of Absolute vodka to celebrate. I'm of Irish descent. Extremely pale, freckled, wavy dark hair and darker green eyes. My husband is half Native American, half German. Dark hair and slightly wavy as well. My daughter came out with light brown curly hair and ever so slight strawberry blonde pieces mixed throughout. Curls for days. And the nurse goes, "Wow, where did you get that hair?" Knowing I had similar color as a baby and my mother has kinky curly hair, my husband, in a room full of nurses, goes, "I don't know, jaded, where did she get that hair? I could have F-king killed him." Paramedic here. Had a mother give birth to a healthy baby in a home. Situational awareness had not helped me yet at this point. I asked if the father was here to cut the cord. We paramedics usually shy away from this duty, because it opens us up to unwanted legal ramifications, should something go wrong. There was a calm in the air after I asked the question and went on to do it myself. Come a few moments later, I was approached by another occupant of the home who informed me that this was a home for victims of sexual assault and that the father of the baby was indeed also the father of the mother and was currently incarcerated due to the aforementioned situation. It was an awkward ride to the hospital after that. Kind of unrelated, but this lady at my church is a white female married to a white male. They have one younger kid who is the spitting image of his dad and obviously white. Then, they have an older kid that is quite visibly mixed. The kid has dark brown skin and curly African American hair and nonetheless looks nothing like the dad. So this lady claims that when she gave birth the hospital gave her baby a shot that turned him black. Therefore, we refer to this kid as Black Shot. Feel bad for the kid, but he truly believes the story and is in like 7th grade. Super awkward for everyone involved. The husband was only in the room for a bit then left and didn't see him again. The father of baby, showed up after the baby was born. I've also had where they didn't know whose baby it was, so both guys were present to see whose they thought it was. I'm a nurse. I have seen quite a few situations where dad turns out not to be dad, but never because of the color of the newborn. I have, however, seen an absolute FK ton of kids who are born and don't look like the same ethnicity as their parents for days or sometimes a couple of weeks. Babies often look darker when they are born. Just saying, some of these anecdotal stories might not necessarily be true. I know a guy who is fully white, his parents are both white and his younger sister is black. I always assumed she was adopted, and one day when I mentioned it, he looked at me weirdly and was like, "No dude, that's my full-blood sister." Obviously I didn't believe it, and apparently neither did his dad at the birth. But they got the paternity test and she was his daughter. Likelihood is they've got some black ancestors far enough back to be forgotten about. I also know a dude who has a white Scottish mom, and a black Jamaican dad. Dude came out pale white with a ginger afro. Genetics were not on his side. Obligatory not a doctor, nurse. But both of my parents have blonde hair. When I was born, my hair was strawberry blonde. My paternal grandparents lost their shit and accused my mom of cheating because red-tinted hair didn't run in their family. However, it ran in my mom's family, with a redhead popping up every now and then. My paternal grandparents didn't know that, they just really hated my mom, so looked for excuses to drag her down. It wasn't until I stopped looking like a potato, as most newborns do, and started looking like a person when my dad's family features came through enough to make them apologize to my mom. Not a cheating story, but my sister's friend was born fair-skinned with red hair and green hazel eye colored. Both parents are dark-skinned with black hair and brown eyes. When her mom gave birth, everyone in the room went silent. However, the father knew that his wife didn't cheat. Turned out, his wife's great-great-grandmother had red hair and fair skin. However, hospital protocol made both parents get a DNA test, and everything was okay. I'm red-haired with blue eyes from a dad with black hair and brown eyes and a mom with auburn hair and hazel eyes. My sister is light blonde with blue eyes. My sister looks very much like my dad features-wise, but I'm more like my mom. And I'm not entirely convinced my dad is my dad, but at this point, it'd be just an odd FYI. He's my dad in the way that matters. When my baby was born, people asked me if her father was Polynesian. Nope. He's a skinny white man. There was no doubt he was the father. She was born with thick black hair, she was a big baby, 4 kilograms, and had jaundice which made her look very tan. The hair fell out, the jaundice went away, she thinned out, and I now have a strawberry blonde-haired 2-year-old that looks exactly like her papa. But man, if I hadn't known he was the only man I'd slept with, I would have some serious doubts. When my eldest was born, first he was a boy when we were told it was a girl, and then the midwife's cleaning him up and says, "Oh, his hair looks strawberry blonde." Me and husband are both dark, so that was unexpected. I meant to make a joke and say, "Are you sure he's mine?" But still being high as a kite on picoin and gas and air, I said, "Husband, are you sure he's yours?" Midwife freaked out, "You can't say that, you can't say that." Husband, who had known me long enough to know my bad jokes, just looked at me, sighed and shook his head. And that was the last chance I had to joke about his paternity. Kid is a total daddy clone except for his hair. Had a patient who came into ER for UTI with her boyfriend of 4 months, his words. She was 19. Acting extremely dramatic for just having UTI. We tell her we need urine. She urges us to cath her, which is really unusual, but she says she can't pee, so me and other nurse assume the position to put in a catheter with her lying on the gurney. At this point nurse screams, "Call L&D." She's crowning. L&D nurse gets in just in time to grab the child as it shoots out into her hands and is a living, breathing baby. The girl swears she had no idea she was pregnant. They wheel her off to postpartum and the guy is just kind of left standing there, dumbstruck. We only been dating 4 months. I had no idea she was pregnant. She never mentioned it at all. As he just buried his head in his knees while he was sitting on the floor against the hallway wall. I felt so bad for the guy. Funny story related to yours. I was born big, 4.2 kilograms, long, had very dark head of hair and was jaundiced. Apparently my grandma was making snide remarks about how I was an Arab baby, insinuating that my mother slept with one of her co-workers, as she happened to be working with some men from Saudi Arabia who were there on a contract. Jokes on her, as out of all of my father's, her sons, kids I looked the most like him. She is dead now, but if she were alive I would have sent her my face app age progression photo, which makes me look remarkably like her. I bet she never apologized either. She wasn't the type. Thanks for watching, don't forget to subscribe, for more updates.